Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a new Lies of P video. Today we're talking about weapons, the many weapons of which you can get in the mid-game. We're talking about, sure, the normal weapons that we have listed here, but also the special, unique weapons that come from bosses and their special ergos, and even a vital amulet that you're absolutely going to want. Of course, I'll be showing you all these locations, all nicely found in the mid-game, through Acts 4, 5, and 6. So with that said, let's get into the video. First up then is a weapon you can get early in Chapter 4 or Act 4, which is the Blind Man's Double-Sided Spear with the blade and handle, of course. This weapon is a technique-focused weapon and comes with Quick Stab and Payback Stab. Quick Stab is a quick forward stab, whereas Payback Stab is a strong forward stab, which can be used immediately after guarding for even more damage. So here's that quick step stab, and then we have the guarding special attack, which does really good stagger damage, as you can see, leading to our fatals. And as a spear, it's going to be pretty much entirely about thrusting, which you can get some interesting heavy attack combinations using the kind of sawblade part as you channel and charge those heavy attacks. As a weapon, running lights are going to be a great way to close the distance with this weapon, but running heavies aren't bad either, but you are held down a lot longer when doing so. Ultimately, I think the weapons are going to be mostly about fast combinations of attacks, and then as you're about to be punished, using your Fable Art block attack to get the most out of that. To find this weapon then, you're going to need to come to Chapter or Act 4, and you're going to need to actually make it to the Cathedral. The third Stargazer along is the Cathedral Chapel Stargazer, which is going to be the natural progression and the first place where you can actually encounter the room this is in. You'll need to climb to the top of that big room with all the mechanical gears, and when you're essentially at the top, you'll have to make a couple jumps to pass through the top middle of two of those moving gears. The second moving gear is almost like an elevator that will take you from this left side of the gear over to the other side on the right side, where you can jump off onto a platform which leads into this room with the chest that has the weapon within. Not an overly difficult one, just progress the main area and then take the side route to the chest. Next, since we are talking about Chapter 4 or Act 4 to begin with, I better talk about our friend here, Alidoro, who is essentially the vendor where you can buy your boss soul weapons. As I've highlighted in a recent video, you can consume these for 5,000 ergo, which is certainly nice, but the problem is you're just going to get one of these per playthrough, so you want to be certain that when you consume these ergos, you do not want either the amulet or the weapon associated with it. The 7-coil spring sword is a pretty standard Motivity style weapon, coming with 7 explosions as its main Fable art, dealing multiple explosions damaging enemies in a sort of AoE. Its secondary handle art is the guard parry, so I actually think this is a good pick. Next is Etiquette, which is a very high scaling technique weapon. This is a very popular weapon if you like the technique playstyle, and is actually a dagger, so very thrust based, and will show dagger movesets soon. It comes with the Fable Art single stab, so you gather strength and do a forward strike with a piercing attack. An absolute counter attack, perfectly block the enemy's attack temporarily right after a successful guard. Use Fable Arts to trigger an extra attack. This is similar to guard parry of the 7-coil spring sword, except you actually get to attack after it, which is probably one of the strongest versions of that absolute defense style Fable art. So it's no wonder that this is a popular weapon, because it's cool in the way that it's just an umbrella. It comes with very high technique scaling to begin with, and both Fable arts are particularly potent, so strongly recommend this one. Then we have the Holy Sword of the Arc, which is a Motivity, again a heavy weapon style weapon. It comes with Patient Smash. This is a very good Fable art we'll talk about soon, gathering your strength for one big singular hit. And then Alter, which transforms the weapon, which is cool. When transformed, stamina consumption will be reduced temporarily. Lastly, we have the final boss of Act 4 and its ergo weapon, the Trident of the Covenant. Despite its spear sort of style, it's actually a blunt weapon. It comes with the Link Rush Stab Fable art, rush forward and stab, and then you can use another Fable slot to jump in place and deliver a downward strike. Meanwhile, the Fable art secondary is guard parry, deflect an attack, trigger a powerful attack. Very good. Also from these, there are amulets, enables dodging when low stamina, increase Fable attack in proportion to number of Fable slots. Whenever you successfully perfect guard, you get a damage increase, or very good, a chance when you're consuming a pulse cell to it just not being consumed. It's amazing. I would really advise you take the amulets here because they're all so good if you do not plan on using any of these particular weapons. But how do you actually unlock Alidoro? Essentially, you need to find him in Chapter 4. From the 4th Stargazer in the library, you need to sort of follow the main path. And as it leads around, you'll go into some decaying water where you'll turn left and go through a crack in the wall. On the other side of that pool is a stairway that leads leads up and eventually brings you to this room with a mini-boss, which we can run past, ignore, and go up the elevator, which leads us to our first meeting with Alidoro. You just need to tell him that a safe place he can go is Hotel Krat. At that point, you can actually use him as a vendor right there on the balcony, or later on he will actually appear here in Hotel Krat. Whenever you find new boss Ergo souls, then you should come back and check what amulet and weapons he has to offer. As we've seen, they are very good weapons. But now we move into Act or Chapter 5 with our first weapon, a spear type weapon. This is the acidic crystal spear though, which could be particularly useful in different areas where acidic type damage is going to be good, and it's our first advanced weapon of the list. With A scaling advanced though, it's actually a very good pick for that. The first fable art is Radiate, which will greatly increase the acid attack temporarily, basically buffing it up, which is probably where most of your fable art bar will go with this weapon. Second to that is Single Stab, which is not bad by any means. Gather your strength for a big forward piercing attack, but you'll probably be ending up buffing this weapon just to make the most out of its effect, because that's what it's all about. This buff and acid damage to actually make the most of its damage type. As you can see, this one's debuffed and it's taking damage over time, basically burning it like a dot. And again, if something is weak to acid, you're going to see very good numbers from that. In regards to the triple attack though, you can charge that up, and as you can see, it does a lot of damage and stagger potential, leading to fatal attacks. It's not a bad attack by any means. In fact, both fable arts are very strong. It's just you probably care more about maintaining the buff out of the two of them. It's found right at the start of Chapter 5. From the very first Stargazer, you just wander down the hill and turn right, heading through this kind of small valley where there's a couple bear traps and a few ambush enemies. And it's right there in the chest at the end, a very easy find indeed. Next up, we have a weapon that a lot of people might have hoped to get right at the Act 2 boss fight, where you face someone using exactly this weapon. This is the Bone Cutting Saw, and it is a Motivity strength heavy weapon. As a moveset, it's quite vertical in the majority of its attacks. It would be great if it was a bit more horizontal, so you know, like this starting light attack, quite sweepy. You'd be great with AoE there, but the majority of them are going to be downward slams, just like the enemy that used it against you in that boss fight. The problem with the weapon is it's going to be super slow, so I think finding your own combos is going to be great. A short heavy can get the slam down quick, and then you can follow that with a light for that horizontal swing, and I think that's going to be one of the better combos in general. Running attacks and running heavy is going to be huge though to get that big damage out for a fast animation. In regards to the fable arts, it comes with Link Chop, a strong downward blow, where we can use extra fable slots for even more strikes. And then Endure, which allows you to temporarily withstand an enemy's attack. It allows you to kind of tank hits, but you're still going to take damage. Endure works for a very slow weapon of this nature though, I will say that. But for its more aggressive style slams, I do think that's going to be a great pick, because it's very high damage despite the lack of upgrade on this. And as you saw, it does lead to staggers, which then leads to a free follow-up fatal attack, and that's going to be a great way to get a lot of damage with this weapon. This one's found the second Stargazer in Act 3, which is Malum District. You will follow the main path around through the alleyways until you come to an open area with a big bonfire and a mini-boss that circles around it, and a bunch of annoying enemies that are above throwing ranged attacks at you. Work your way behind the boss to the other side, and you'll find a way up, where as we turn back in on ourselves, looking back over the bonfire, we'll turn left and make our way to the left side, where there's just a chest waiting on one of these platforms up above. Inside the chest is the weapon, as easy as that. Next, we have a pretty cool one, this curved sword, which is the Bramble curved sword. It's an interesting one because it's a quality weapon. What that means is it means it scales pretty well with both motivity and technique. We could focus one of them, but having a nice balance does give you a lot of value there. It comes with a fable art Storm Slash, which is pretty standard, and then Furious Slash for just the single fable art. Slashes an enemy in front of you multiple times, and if you hold down the attack button, you'll keep attacking, and after a certain time, trigger a strong finishing attack, which is cool. So here's the more standard triple combo, which does lead to staggers, as you can see, very potent there, but you will need 3 bars for that. And then the one where we hold down the combo, going and going and going, flourishing with that attack at the end. Out of the two, I prefer the blocking focused one because that's just really satisfying and leads to a strong attack at the end. But both are very potent combos, as you can see, and lead to consistent staggers for fatal arts. As a weapon though, it's just a quick sword moveset with some interesting heavies because it kind of has you dash forward, which can be a really good way to gap close and deal big damage by charging the heavy. So many people might really like this weapon just for that. The Bramble curved sword is actually really easy to get. It's in the Red Lobster Inn. As you follow the main path through Chapter 5, you'll eventually be brought into the backside of this inn. By passing through the ground floor in this main room with all the enemies, you'll unlock the door that leads back to the Stargazer where this all started. Now entering this newly unlocked door, you'll see hidden on the right a ladder that leads up to an area above. In this area, we have both a chest and a merchant who wants you to tell him you're part of the gang. But once you pay him off or convince him, he'll sell you a bunch of stuff, including this sword. Speaking of swords, our next weapon is another curved sword. This is the Dancer's curved sword, and it has a really cool visual design. Less of a quality weapon, it's more of a technique-focused weapon, this one. It comes with the Fable Arts Link Retreating Slash, allowing you to move back and then rush back in if you want to continue the attack, versus the Guard Parry, which, as you know, I think is very good. So here's that jump back and then jump back in if you want to. And again, yep, really good stagger damage. When it comes to the counter-attack, it's actually got a bit of a delay on it. If I show you, when I'm blocking and then press it, there's a moment of delay when I begin the animation, then when that pop of blue happens, that's when you want the actual attack to strike you. So it's actually quite a tight window, and you want to use it just before the attack actually lands on you, and I'm struggling to show it because I'm recording. There we go. So we actually land the counter. That leads to potential stagger, as you can see. As a weapon of this kind of finesse style, it's quite quick and agile. Again, we have a heavy attack charge that moves us quite forward. Another good one in my opinion, but it's light and quick and relatively fast with the combos that you'll be using. I think this leads to a fun playstyle and is a very cool weapon if you're interested. This is our first Chapter 6 or Act 6 weapon though, and is found at the end of this main road from the Rosa Isabella Street entrance. Following the main path, you'll eventually come through a building which leads you down some construction work or down a big ladder onto a main road that has an absolute pile of enemies on it. A load of ranged enemies with guns, and these annoying puppets that stand still, can't move, but throw bombs. All the way behind this pile of horrible enemies is the chest where you pick up the sword itself. Next up, we have quite an interesting one. We have the exploding pickaxe. This is a more strength motivity focused weapon, of course. It comes with flame strike, 3 Fable Art bar to use this, rush forward, jump and deliver a downward blow, and when you cut downward, the explosions deal fire damage to surrounding enemies. Then, after that, your weapon will be buffed up with fire, so I think this is a very good weapon, especially when dealing with the undead corpse enemies, as they are weak to fire. On the other hand, you have a cheap Fable Art, conserve energy, decrease stamina consumption temporarily. You probably use this semi-regularly, but for big hitters, you'd definitely be using Flame Strike. As a weapon with its moveset, then, it's quite slow and vertical, as you should expect from essentially a pickaxe. Those with the light attacks, the charge heavy, is just a downward slam that can be comboed into another downward slam. So, ultimately, a very repetitive and simple moveset, but quite slow and vertical. I would recommend the running heavy for sure for gap closing and a quick heavy attack, and then look for charge heavies whenever you can, especially following up with the second attack since it is slightly faster. Let's have a look at the Flame Strike then. We leap in, up, down, and slam, and then we have a weapon buff where, as you can see, the peak of my weapon is now on fire, so we're actually dealing fire damage and building that up as we attack. Honestly, I do rate this as a good weapon, especially with its ability to not only deal a very cool and potent weapon attack, but then buff itself up, which is a very strong thing in certain sections of the game. To get your own exploding pickaxe then, you need to make it to the Estella Opera House by progressing the main area through all of Act 6. The pickaxe is found quite late into this area. By progressing through it, eventually you'll reach the boss room, which is this room on the other side of this flaming chandelier that's swinging side to side. Just to the right of that, down the corridor and on your left, is a small room that's being guarded and patrolled by this hideous big mini-boss puppet. And inside there is a safe that you can loot that just has the weapon in it. Now, earlier I did mention that we would have a dagger moveset, and we're finally looking at it. The Tyrant's Murderer's Dagger is a very interesting weapon. It comes with grind to buff up your crit hit chance, which is very good, generally for a fast weapon like this, and it comes with quick stab for a quick forward stab like we mentioned before. It is, of course, a technique weapon, scaling with B to begin with, which leaves me unsure about it. We can increase the technique scaling to A if we were to buff this up, but I almost think it should start with an A scaling to really make it as potent as possible. It's a fast moveset though, and a very interesting playstyle. You'll attack multiple times with the charged heavy attacks, which is quite satisfying, but it's definitely an in and out playstyle. I like the idea of using the running heavy attack, which is a leap to get in, then using multiple light attacks, and then bouncing out of there quickly. You would probably maintain the critical buff the whole time. That's where all of your Fable Arts is going to go, and this actually leads us to get up to that 1000 damage and above way faster, which is obviously very important. I like the dagger moveset. This is one that I think is good, especially with the Fable Art specifically to buff up with crit damage. This is actually from a functional item you find in in the Opera House, which then you bring to a trader in Hotel Krat. You need the collection item to bring to Hotel Krat to bring to this NPC here, and then you'll be able to increase the amount of goods that he actually sells. At that point, you'll be able to get acid grindstones and temporarily enhance the guard performance grindstone, and you'll be able to buy the dagger itself. Also at this point though, very important, you'll unlock the Carcass Butcher's Amulet, which is that vital amulet that I referenced at the start of this video. There are two amulets in this game that are very important: Puppet Destroyer's Amulet and the Carcass Butcher's Amulet. Generally, there's three types of enemies. There's the living humans, right? Then there's the puppets, and then there's the undead carcasses. The Puppet Destroyer Amulet that we get in the early game increases your damage inflicted to all puppets. So whenever you're fighting a puppet, you'd want this amulet on. And vice versa, when you're fighting carcasses, the undead, you want this amulet. And you get it from the same method, unlocking it with that vendor to be able to buy it. The functional items found also in the Opera House. To get it, you need to drop down the hall where the fire chandelier is, and then go into the hallway, moving away from that Trinity door that's also down there. As you progress down there, you turn right and go into the room ahead with the safe that has the collection item within it. We bring that back to the hotel, increase the stock, and then we can buy both the amulet and the weapon. But there you have it. That's my overview and showcase of a bunch of weapons you'll find in Act 4, 5, and 6. Hopefully that gives you some considerations if maybe there's a build you're looking for now that you're inspired by one of the weapons in this video. There are more weapons and stuff to find, like we could get another boss weapon and just one more normal weapon right at the end of Act 6 technically. But yeah, let us know if you'd like to see another follow-up to this video. Maybe you want to see where all the locations and showcase of all the weapons are for the final chapters. For now though, I hope this was useful to you. I've been Hollow. You've been you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.